Franklin County Commissioners meeting. Franklin County Commissioners meeting, May 31st, 2017.
Gotta be awful close. That's different than AT&T. So, anyway, with that, we are here for our Wednesday, May 31 board meeting. Commissioner Peck, myself, Commissioner Miller is still out with some.
He's on the phone.
Oh, he's on the phone this morning. Okay.
You there? Can you hear us, Commissioner? Rick? Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Oh. Make sure you can hear us.
Good morning.
Okay, I think I can hear you. Let me get the, there we go, speakerphone's on. Okay. I'm ready.
All right. Well, we're just opening the meeting. I didn't realize you're on the phone, so welcome.
Thank you.
So, with that, if you would join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Our first order of business this morning is adopting Franklin County background check policy. Carly, bring that to us.
Yeah, good morning. For the board's consideration today, I'm requesting adoption of the background check policy. It's a policy that was created in partnership with county administration, the prosecuting attorney's office and risk manager, and the Washington County's risk pool. So I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Mr. Cook, anything?
Start it off.
Start it off, okay. Well, just give me a chance to go first. Okay, so first off, thanks for doing this. I agree we should have a policy. There are lots of things we should have policies on. We have policies that need to be updated. It's good to see we're making progress. For those who are listening, I understand that this policy would not apply to certain groups or categories of employees, civil service in particular. Can you just, to get us started, tell people which categories of employees this policy would not apply to?
It specifically would not apply to positions within the sheriff's office subject to civil service rules. So that's any classified position within the sheriff's office. They have more strict background check requirements, including polygraph testing and some other
positions of public trust and law enforcement and so forth.
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to have that in the record for anybody who's listening. So I had a couple of general comments. I think we're close, but in the first page of the policy, paragraph 3 policy, it says that are contingent upon clear results of a thorough background check. The word clear, does that mean clear as in easily understandable, or does that mean clear as in no indications of a problem? What does clear mean?
It can mean both.
Okay, that's fair.
Because
I think policy should be clear, and I want people that read it to be able to know what it means.
Agreed.
Okay, so I'm sorry, it could be both.
It could be. Clearly understandable, but not necessarily. As you see under the same section, a criminal record will not automatically disqualify an applicant from employment. So
if an offer of employment is contingent upon clear results, really that can only mean understandable results.
Yes.
Okay. So the term generally followed is found in 5B. For criminal history checks, the following practices and procedures will be generally followed. I admit up front I'm kind of a stickler on some of these things, and on policy in particular, where people are relying on reading a document and they're going to follow the guidance and the rules laid out by the board in that policy. I get concerned when I see something that says it'll be generally followed, and I know it goes on to kind of try and illuminate when it doesn't get strictly followed, but I had a little trouble with that, and it seems to me that the practices and procedures should be followed, period. And if there are exceptions or variations, then we should articulate what those are. So it goes on to say that checks will be done in accordance with law, do a disclosure form. This is very similar to what we do with our bi-county arrangement, right, where they submit an employment application, but then there's also a separate background check sheet that they fill out.
Correct.
Okay, all right. And then that authorizes us to do the criminal background check. Let's see. If they've done their own, then we can review that. And it says, unless otherwise provided by law, factors considered in this determination may include but are not limited to. So I take that to mean we can consider anything we want.
Correct.
Okay. So if we get a background check that comes back and it's got information on it, and it's got conviction history, then somebody is going to look at it and look at the nature of the crime, relationship to the position. Is it an embezzlement conviction for someone going into a finance job, for example? So I get all that. What concerns me about it is that it looks like, well, it's a little unclear to me who's really making the decision here. Is this the department heads who have long held that they have individual discretion in hiring, or is it HR, or is it some other person that is making this judgment call as to what does and does not qualify as a disqualifying history? And then the other thing is that I didn't see anything, but can we assume that if someone is known to be currently in violation of state or federal law, that they would not be eligible? Or is that also discretionary based on judgment?
The EEOC requires what is called an individualized assessment when a criminal record or criminal activity is found. And that's where there's not a one-size-fits-all answer.
And that's pretty clear. So who should do that assessment under this policy in Franklin County?
So at Franklin County, we would recommend that assessment start in HR as the subject matter experts, and then we will partner with legal and particularly the risk pool, because one of the requirements for all of our positions is insurability by our insurance carrier, the county's risk pool.
And that sounds very reasonable. So who would ultimately then make the decision once you've got HR and the risk pool and legal and perhaps the county administrator involved? Who ultimately makes that call, and is that shown in this policy?
The hiring authority makes the call.
And that is?
That would be the elected official or the county administrator in the case of the departments.
Okay. Because the people who are responsible ultimately for risk management in the county is this board, I'm not really comfortable in having those decisions where you have a criminal history involved being made at that department level. And I don't know what the statutory backing is for department heads to be the hiring authority and to have that authority to make that call. But we've clearly had some history here in Franklin County with employees that were hired who had criminal backgrounds that we later discovered were known. And so that's part of why I'm sensitive to this policy.
Sure. The department heads don't have statutory authority to make those hiring decisions, but elected officials do.
Okay.
That's where the distinction
and
is.
that's
so
who I meant. So
we would make recommendation to the elected official. I had extensive conversation regarding this particular piece of the policy. Was originally written more specifically, but in discussions with the risk pool and, with prosecuting attorneys. It was, if we, an affirmative statement of policy for that an action is going to happen every time does create a matter of, creates a risk for the county if an elected official doesn't follow that. But at the same time, elected officials have a certain amount of autonomy when it comes to staffing their offices, particularly around personnel-related decisions. What the policy does is protects the county as a whole in the case of these processes are followed, a recommendation is made that the hiring of an individual, could potentially create risk for the county, and they're not insurable. If something were to happen, it wouldn't be an insurable event by the risk pool. We recommend you don't hire them. Elected official makes a hiring decision and decides to hire that person. If there then is an event that creates risk for the county, then the county and the risk pool are not necessarily bound to indemnify that elected official from the potential results of that decision.
Yeah, I don't know who's providing that legal advice, but they need to be reminded of something called joint and several liability in the state of Washington, because we can't shed that liability. The county will be sued, and if we're shown to be even 1% responsible, we can be 100% responsible, as I understand it, for the outcome. And that's, you did a nice job of focusing it in, because that really is the crux of it, is that if you have an elected official who has a particular need for a skill set or a person and is feeling workload pressures and difficulty in finding the perfect candidate, there I believe is a potential for them to perhaps underweight a history and not have the objectivity in looking at that history and weighing out the potential liability for the county. And it's my view that in those kinds of situations, there ought to be another level of review in this policy that provides some additional objectivity and a second opinion, since the liability doesn't just rest on that department and that elected official, it rests on the taxpayers of the county.
What kind of next level process would you recommend
I would,
beyond the objectivity of
yeah,
the risk
I would
pool
want it to
or-
go to the county administrator as a review, as a final checkoff. Yeah, because ultimately the liability accrues to the people of the county and to the county government, not to Department X or elected official overseeing Department X. And the risk pool can say, well, we're not going to indemnify and protect that elected official of that department because they made a bad decision, but that doesn't get the county off the hook. The county still has lots of liability. And so I think our policies ought to be geared toward not trying to shed responsibility onto a particular elected official, but rather to protect the county as a whole. And, exactly how we word that, would probably take a little bit of careful examination, but that's one. And the other one, and I don't know if I articulated the question well, but it's if there is someone who is an applicant for employment who is known to or believed to be currently violating state or federal law, are they automatically ineligible for employment?
No one is automatically ineligible for employment.
Okay, so if someone comes in and applies, are we prohibited from asking about their citizenship status?
We are prohibited from asking about their citizenship status. We can,
If they
with the
should-
exception of one position in the county that requires U.S. citizenship to issue passports, we can ask them if they are authorized to work in the United States. And within 3 days of hire, we're required to, through the I-9 form, through USCIS, obtain the original and touch the documents that prove that they are
Right.
legally able to work within the U.S. or they're terminated after that 3-day period.
So if a Franklin County cherry farmer wants to hire someone to pick. They typically will have an I-9 form if the person is not a U.S. citizen, but it'll show their documents proving that they have the right to work in the country. And there are some pretty famous, if not infamous, cases of growers in Washington State being visited by INS and having audits of their I-9s, and in some cases having large portions of their workforce sent home and businesses nearly closed.
It's pretty hefty fines involved in.
Well, that's right. So I'm looking at that and I'm saying, a tree fruit farmer in our county can't hire somebody without verifying their authorization to work in this country legally. What is our situation with respect to that? It sounds like you're saying we're not permitted to ask or secure documents. Yet the farmer, I think, is required to, and I'm not understanding the disconnect, so maybe you can educate me.
We can't ask it as part of the pre-employment process, but on day one of their employment, they're required to fill out the front page of the I-9 form that indicates whether they're a citizen or their work authorization.
Okay. All right. Well, that's
and within
the
3 days, produce the documents, and we fill out the I-9 form. And I will say, prior to my tenure at the county, we weren't, always consistent with that process, but we are 100% consistent now.
Well,
and if they can't produce those by their 3rd day of employment, they are separated from employment at the county.
Okay, and I'm, to be clear, I'm not trying to single out any group of people or any class. I'm trying to follow the law, and I'm trying to create a policy that helps the county follow the law and minimize liability for the citizens. This is the first time anyone has even referenced the fact that we do I-9s in the county, and it may be because we haven't done it in the past, so thank you for fixing that.
Of course.
I think my other concern about the level of review and the liability for the county is probably the only thing in my mind right now that still holds me up on supporting this particular policy as written. I don't know, I'd be interested in what anyone else thinks.
Pretty much covered it. Keith, did you have any thoughts?
No, I think in a general sense we've kind of followed that practice. We don't run into this every day, but we have run into it where someone's got something in their background that gives us pause, and we've had that conversation with some of the other elected officials about making sure that anything that rises in that record check is cleared before they make a hiring decision. So far, our relationship with the other elected officials has been good when they realize that it creates a risk pool issue or a potential conflict of interest or something. They've all been real good to say, yeah, you're right, we've got to not extend an offer of employment or continue the employment relationship with that individual. So as a practical matter, I think that's what we're doing, but I think Commissioner Peck is correct that it ought to be written into the policy so it's clear to those reading the policy what our expectations are. Whether that last level of review comes only through Carly or if it needs to come to me, I don't have a strong opinion, but I agree with in the concept that there ought to be some independent review to make sure that we've got risk pool coverage for anyone we hire.
But to be clear, my opinion is that secondary review should be at least the county administrator, no lower. And I can think of, frankly, 3 cases right off the top of my head involving Franklin County that are directly on point with this issue. And I suppose for matters of privacy, I won't go there, but there's they exist more frequently than we might like to think.
That makes sense.
If it is acceptable to the board, we'd be happy to write in a provision, an additional step in that section 5. I guess is where it was.
Yeah, I think it would go under the practices, and I would ask you to look at the term "will be generally followed." I'm just not accustomed to, and I admit it may be a military background coming to the surface here, but regulations in the military are not things that will generally be followed. They will be followed. And so I'm wondering why a county policy is even a policy if it doesn't have to be followed. So I know you go to articulate some of the exceptions, but I would be more comfortable if it said will be followed unless, authorized exemption by county administrator or something to that effect, because it just leaves it too open to interpretation as to when you do and when you don't.
Bring it back next week.
Yep.
And I will say, just since we've had a discussion in which I'm, I think, ever so mildly, I hope, criticizing a product, I think HR is doing a great job, and I appreciate the advancements that we're making, because there are a lot of documents and policies like this that either have not existed or need refinement. So this, to count this as a big plus, it's just, I don't think we're 100% yet. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would agree. I think this is a very good policy to have, and I think that we're working towards the best situation we can on this, and this is one of the discussions during this discussion we had here that we can pick up on and add to make it better. So I support the plan on this, and I suspect you said you're going to bring it back next week in consent, or just bring it back as a full motion.
I'd like it back on the agenda just so that we can review and make sure that everybody is satisfied with the adjustments. And I know we're all going to look at them during the week. We'll get read ahead, so it'll probably be very short discussion next week.
Yes, good. Yeah, thank you.
I will do that. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks. Mr. Chairman, I know that public comment is next on the agenda, and there is a constituent here who talked to me in advance of the meeting who is going to make a public comment. So I would ask we go ahead and do the public comment. I would ask Mr. Schlegel to hold his comments, and right after anyone else has made their comments, I'd like to review a subject that he's going to speak to the board about, if that's okay.
So it is public comment.
Can you all turn your, I don't think your mics are on. Either that or I can't be out in my old age.
You been out the range lately there, Sheriff?
That could be.
Yeah, mine was on, but I'll tell you what, I'll move it up closer.
There you go. Thank you.
All right. So, as we have mentioned, it is public comment period. Anybody like to speak?
Okay.
None?
Well, with that, I talked to Lauren ahead of time and talked with Keith a little bit. And I may get some of this wrong. If I do, jump in, correct me, but I'll summarize it, and then I'll explain what I'm trying to do here. My understanding is that we've adopted the International Building Code here in Franklin County. We've made some local amendments to that, and I think they're generally good amendments, but we have a unique situation that has created a glitch for a constituent. I'd like to help get it fixed. So the scenario is that under the building code, you can get a building permit, and every 6 months, 180 days, so long as you're making what's deemed to be reasonable or substantial process, the governing body can grant extensions to that, typically 180-day extensions, 6 months. And as I read the code, there's no limit on how many of those that you can do. The idea being that as long as you're making good progress, I think hopefully it anticipates the fact that not everybody wants to go out and get a loan and have their project built by a contractor in 90 days or 180 days, but that some people want to do it over time, out of pocket, doing a lot of the work themselves, and as long as they're making progress and not being a problem for their neighbors, that to me seems like a responsible thing to do. So the problem is that one of the local amendments in adopting the International Building Code is that there is a hard stipulation that says in Franklin County you got 24 months, period. And if you haven't finished in that 24 months, then your permit expires and you have to reapply for a new permit, and there's a new fee for that and so forth. It doesn't strike me as being constituent friendly, which I think we should always be trying to be. But further, it creates an especially unique situation when you are a county resident living in a donut hole who took out a building application, who's coming up on your 24-month window, and you're not quite going to be able to make the deadline, and the county says, well, you got 24 months and we don't issue a new permit because of this policy. You've got 24 months period. You're going to have to come in and apply for a new permit and pay a new fee. But then you talk to the city who says, well, you've been annexed in, so the county can't issue you a new building permit. You have to go to the city and get one. And the city's policy doesn't necessarily say that it's 25% of the permit fee. It might be a whole new permit fee all over. We really don't know. Add to that the city and the county have at least an informal agreement that for those areas that have been annexed in the donut hole, the county received the original permit fees, and therefore the county should be obligated to do the inspections and the work on the project. And so they want us to see through all of these construction projects in the donut holes that were annexed. And all of that seems perfectly reasonable to me. The one little glitch is that county stipulation that says 24 months period, and if you don't finish it, then you have to come into the county and get a new permit. And, oh, by the way, we can't issue a new permit because you've been annexed and you no longer belong to us. So the solution in my mind is that we simply update that county ordinance that adopts the International Building Code for Franklin County and includes that line that says that there's a 24-month. We just simply delete that part and operate under the International Building Code like it appears most every other county does. And this problem gets solved, and we avoid this issue in the future as additional areas continue to be annexed. I hope that was at least remotely clear. Steve, you want to comment?
Thank you, gentlemen. I am in this situation. I wasn't.
And it's Steve Schlegel. You live on Richardson in West Pasco?
Yes, 9304 West Richardson Road. I am in this situation where shortly before we were annexed, I did get a permit for a garage extension onto my house. And been sort of working along, all the other ancillary projects that have to be done, with grading everything over the last couple of years. This last winter, I started in earnest, finally getting the foundation poured, the stem wall poured, walls up, and, well, actually, at that point it stopped because the snow hit. And this has been a record, winter for that. And so all construction stopped everywhere. Well, finally, I'm able to start work again, but all the contractors, like my roofing contractor, he cannot put on the roof for 2 months. I mean, it's not the fact of having money or not. He can't do it for 2 months. He's backed up. Everybody's backed up. So we're working on it, but I just can't quite get it done within the 24-month period. And it's a couple of inspections short of being able to get my occupancy permit. And it's a case of, yes, I've been working on it and paying for it as I go along rather than take out a bunch of debt and loan at this point because I'm 63 years old and retired at this point and don't have a regular income. So I trade out our hours of my time for dollars, essentially.
Yeah, which I think is admirable personally, but that's your finances are none of my business, but I appreciate people that work hard and invest their own capital. Lauren, was there anything in my summation where I got off track or said anything that wasn't accurate, as far as you know?
No.
Could you read that?
When you didn't mention.
Come on up to a mic, please. Yeah. Make sure that one's on so everybody can hear you. There you go.
Yeah, it was pretty accurate. The main issue is for the ones that annex into the city, it's extremely difficult, but it's also difficult for those that aren't.
Well, to me, it seems like an additional restriction that we're putting on people in Franklin County that isn't commonly found in other counties. As far as I'm concerned, that's enough reason to undo it. We should, in my view, be leaning forward to help citizens be successful, and if it takes them a little longer to do their project, as long as they're making reasonable progress and they're not creating a burden to their neighbors, I think we ought to be as flexible as possible. Am I correct that ordinance that includes that line, that we could simply remove that line and pass a new ordinance. I presume it probably would require a public hearing in 2 weeks. It's probably a 2-week notice on a public hearing, and then we could immediately thereafter approve the updated one that would simply have that requirement removed. Is that a feasible plan in your mind?
Yeah, the time schedule for this is probably more critical, but
I'm trying to get it done by June 30th when
Yeah.
Mr. Slagle's permit
yeah,
expires. And
I
since we're
think
not making,
if we jump on it right away, we might be able to make that time frame. But yeah,
well, we just did, I want to be clear, we just did a review of this whole ordinance last year. And so I don't see a need to review the whole thing. If we simply
just repeal that one
just
section.
repeal that one section, do a public hearing in a week or 2 weeks, whatever the notice requirement is, and then immediately after that hearing, the board, if we think at that time it's the appropriate thing to do, the board could go ahead and approve that new ordinance, and we would solve the problem for Mr. Slagle that was inadvertently created with the best of intentions, I'm sure, and also fix this issue for any future citizens.
That's correct.
Mr. Chairman, based on those discussions, I would recommend that the board, by consensus, move in that direction, and we try and get this wrapped up so that Mr. Slagle and others can get on with their construction projects.
Yeah, I think that's is necessary. I think we've got a city just north of us is about to go bankrupt over the same scenario, so.
Well, I didn't know about that, but I'm glad to hear that we're on the right track. Okay. Well,
do you know offhand, Karen, what the record
public hearing.
It's the 2 weeks.
Is it? And is it it probably is a hearing.
Yeah,
Because
we could look into seeing whether or not it could be qualify under, an emergency type situation as well, in which case you can actually schedule a hearing and stuff within 30 days, after the action. So if it qualifies.
Sure.
So we can explore that too, but I think you have to publicize usually 10 days prior to the hearing.
Yeah.
So if we can meet the 10-day prior.
Yeah, I think we've got time. I mean, This is 1st of June. We've got at least 3, if not 4 weeks, 2 weeks on a hearing. We just need to get the notice out here in the next couple of days.
Yeah, so we'll have to work with Civil, get the draft ordinance resolution.
Well, I think you can take the exact ordinance and just delete that line. But it's worth looking at to make sure there isn't something more. But can we leave that to you, gentlemen?
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks.
Mr. Slagle, thanks for coming in. You're certainly welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but we won't think you're rude if you have to leave either. I don't know, you might have to go
Put a roof on.
put a roof on or something.
Sheathing on the side.
Sure. I appreciate you bringing up the subject, though, and giving us a call. We can't fix what we don't know. So.
All right, with that, we will move on to payroll and warrant registers.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, we have 2 documents here today that represent bills. The first is payroll, so move for approval of salary clearing payroll and emergency management payroll as presented in the aggregate amount of $929,602.33. I'll note for the record that this has been reviewed and signed off by 2 members of the auditor's office. That's it.
I'll go ahead and second it so that we can sign it from here, Rick.
Okay, so I think all we need is a
All in favor?
vote. Aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Miller, did you hear that? Okay, 2 votes is enough. I'll just go ahead and mark 2-0 approved. If you'll sign that one. He may have had to drop
Am I
off.
on mute now?
No, you're all right now.
No, are you there?
Okay, yeah, I had voted for that and was seconded too, but Bob said he would second it since I'm not there. But that's fine, I did hear that. I don't know which way I'm going now. So I'm going off mute now. Thank you.
Well, can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay, good. We can hear you, so please just leave it like that.
Okay, gotcha.
All right, so, Mr. Chairman, second item is fund expenditures. Move for approval in the total amount of $537,804.45 as presented. Note for the record, it's signed by 2 members of the auditor's office, as well as the county administrator has reviewed his initial.
And I'll also second that, so we can get it signed from here, Rick.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So it's
That's 3-0.
3-0.
We can change that to 3-0, please. Copy of that.
So with that, we're on to the consent agenda.
And I'm just going to take a quick moment here to look at these one more time. Probably looked at them 3 times already.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, there's another one. Is Mr. Mahoney here today, or anybody from Public Works?
No, I didn't see anybody come in.
They're always here, and I don't have questions for them. And today I do, and they're not. But that's okay. It's not a big deal. Okay, Mr. Chairman, there are 11 items in the consent agenda. Move for approval as presented with discussion on a couple items.
Still there, Rick?
Yes.
Did you want
I
to?
heard that. You're going to second it, right, since you're there?
I think you can second it. You're participating. Just
Okay, I will second it.
okay. So, Mr. Chairman, the 2 items are on item 2. I just wanted to acknowledge and I guess commend the Sheriff's Office for this part-time call receiver position. We are critically short of people in our 911 answering center, and this solution is not one that had ever occurred to me, but it makes an awful lot of sense, and it doesn't eliminate the risk that we've experienced there, but it does help. And so I just want to acknowledge that that's a good thing they're doing. Happy to support it. And then the other thing was on the Public Works organization chart, but I'll take that up with Keith and Matt later. It's just a minor detail on how they drew their chart. It doesn't really change the approvals any.
Okay. With that, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And did you make any arrangements for Rick's signature ahead of time? I hadn't heard of any.
I can come in the morning if we need to, or this afternoon even, probably.
Well, not that it says anything besides, nobody's,
I have to make arrangements with his today or tomorrow.
I know when I was out, we just made the arrangements for the clerk to sign in lieu of.
nobody's ever gonna notice. Probably one of those, don't worry about it. Well, you never know. You never know. Wow. I missed 2 signatures today. I think that means Commissioner Miller has to buy somebody lunch.
Well, you can come over here and have some pain pills with me for lunch.
Well, just don't go driving, Tiger.
No, promise I won't.
A friend of mine posted on Facebook about Tiger Woods' situation. He said, I'm no caddy, but I think he should have used the driver.
Yeah.
That line in the ordinance is, I think, on page 12. If you just want to make a note, make it easier to find.
All right, Keith.
Thank you.
What do you have for us?
Yes, we've had some discussions in the past about those things that we are required under the Constitution or statutes to do versus those things which we maybe do as customer service or good practice, but may not otherwise legally be obligated to do. And I think you're all aware, we had some discussions around this topic before, and the requirement we do have to run elections in Franklin County. That's managed under the county auditor's office. They brought to our attention some time ago the need to replace their election tabulation system. They have gone through the process of seeking potential vendors to provide the technical capability for us to do that. We know that the system we're using now is antiquated, needs to be replaced, and so they have put together a proposal. We're not asking for action on the matter today. We thought we'd have it on the agenda for your vote to approve the contract and that resolution, but we will delay that until next week. I wanted to have some brief discussion about it today to make sure that each member of the board was aware of what we're trying to accomplish and why that's important. It's got a bit of a unique financing arrangement to make sure that we're saving the county the most money that we can. We recognize these systems are expensive and it's taxpayer money at the end of the day that is being asked to pay for these things. But the auditor's office has got their subject matter experts, both from the voting technical system here as well as for the financial side, to answer any questions that you would have today. And if there's any homework that needs to be done between now and next week when we bring it back for your actual consideration of voting, we wanted to make sure that you had adequate time to understand, to ask questions about what's being proposed. The company's name is Dominion Voting Systems. They have worked pretty closely with us on putting this together to make sure that we're getting what we need, that the system will work. We do have elections coming up. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but our next election that we'll need these for is in...
Well, ideally for August 1st, the primary.
August 1st primary. So it's an issue that we need to have resolved fairly quickly. As I said, we had hoped to have this before the board today, but recognize that there may be questions that you have and wanted to adequately address those before we ask for a vote. So, if you would like Matt or any member of his team to speak to some of the specifics, I'm sure they'd be delighted to do that.
Well, Matt and I discussed this. You can come up, Matt. We had discussed this yesterday, and as I think everybody in the courthouse knows, that I'm not for instant. We need the read-aheads is what they're for, and not just drop it in on 18 hours notice. So, although I think it's an excellent deal, I don't want to set a precedent and let it go through right away. And I asked Matt to come back with some numbers from his team to show where revenue is coming from and what's best. I think the buyout option is by far the best for the county, but we were just wanted to see some numbers and hear some numbers. So, Matt, can you help us?
Sure. This one. So, what we have is an opportunity here to buy and upgrade equipment and software, capture efficiencies and new technology, all for about the amount we spend to operate our current system. So, in developing these, we've had worked with IS, the PA's office, as well as the finance department to come up with what we're proposing, which is option 3, the purchase option, which realizes the most savings over the 8-year period we displayed, and involves a down payment and with 3 payments.
And which copy was the breakdown of where the revenue is coming from?
Well, so the revenue will come from there's already an expenditure with the county. The county spends $50,000 a year already to operate the current system, as well as. Well, that's interesting. Did you do that? That's great. As well as to get down to the weeds a little bit, is that our current system was purchased with federal grant dollars, which prevented during the billing of our partner districts from the operating elections, we could not recover depreciation. So we will be able to bill for that, but strictly speaking, we only spend $50,000 a year to maintain the system purchased in 2005.
I guess part of my question yesterday was getting part of this, where the money's coming from. O&M is part of it, and can you?
Well, the O&M is just the location for the interfund loan. I mean, there's a portion that we have an election revolving fund, and so that's where we are able to bill
for the depreciation of the equipment, and so it involves our initial purchase. I think $43,000 will come from the revolving fund. And Tim can speak to
asking who you're billing. When you say you're billing for that.
Well, it's in districts. If it's the city, if it's a cemetery district, school district. But that's part of the current operation. I mean, we recover the costs, the ratios in odd years. We're able to recoup.
I thought you said you couldn't, because it was federal grant dollars, recoup the depreciation on the equipment from those districts.
Right. But the operation of the cost of the actual election, we can. So that's what, I mean,
how much of the total then is the depreciation? What I'm really leading to is how much of an increase are those other districts and cities likely to see? Is it going to be just a couple of % for depreciation, or is it going to be a big increase for them?
I don't think we've calculated that yet. I mean, one of the reasons is we haven't, until we purchase the equipment and know the actual cost.
Do we know the length of the depreciation? How many years?
I don't. Not off the top of my, no.
Yeah, because I know Wendy's already sitting back there going, okay, so it's going to be an increased cost to the other taxing districts. How much is it going to be? Is it going to be substantial? And that's where I was going is the city going to see a big increase in their costs? And that doesn't necessarily make it wrong. My guess is that other counties that have their own equipment tally out that depreciation cost to them. So not saying it's improper to do it, just trying to give them a heads up on whether they're going to see a big increase or maybe just a small one.
I can speak to that. While the depreciation may go up in an effort to create a fund to replace it, this when it runs out, the maintenance cost will actually decrease from $50,000 to $23,000. So the overall cost of the election, the building, and it remains to be seen what, I believe we're going to capture some efficiencies here. So I don't know necessarily that the overall cost of the election is going to go up.
So the cities might actually see a reduction, possibly.
Potentially.
Okay, well, that's good. Were you also looking to what the funding sources were for buying this?
Well, yeah, and making sure that the revenue is there, and of course it's savings to start with of it's costing us $53K now to run an election, or the equipment. So
yeah, maybe we could just summarize what the pots of money are that are funding this. Wasn't there the auditor's O&M was part of it, and then a couple of other sources?
The auditor's O&M was the source of the NFL loan. So, do you want to speak to it, Tim?
There's already some cash in the. There's already some cash in the election equipment reserve fund, and so that would be the other portion. Portion of it.
Just ballpark. Is that half of it? Is that 40,000?
40,000, I think, is the number.
I thought it was about 40K. Okay, and this total is $349,870 and 57 cents. But that's shown over a number of years, so we're gonna pay for it over time, are we?
I can speak to that. So that actually is just so we can do an apples to apples comparison of the lease versus buy. That actually is, the cost of the system is $163.5, and then that's the estimated cost of maintenance every year.
Okay.
That's, all right. Yeah.
And that's good. That was one of the questions I was going to have is where the maintenance numbers. I thought that the year 2 through 8 numbers were additional capital purchase numbers, so that's maintenance. Okay, good.
So that $163,500, that's the purchase of the equipment, and then each subsequent year, it's actually lower. The cost will be lower than what it is right now. It's right around $50,000 right now compared to between 22 to 30 in those subsequent years. So it's a pretty substantial cost savings in the future years.
Yeah, that's why looking at it yesterday, I suggested this option 3 over the lease, or, because it's best bang for the buck that we're,
And definitely the cost savings of doing an interfund loan versus financing it through them is substantial.
Yeah. And so the expenses on lease option 1 and 2, it's listed years 1 through 8. That those numbers represent essentially the O&M, the operations and maintenance for these leased systems for each of those years. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay. And so in the purchase option, you've not shown any O&M costs for year 1.
First year maintenance, the maintenance fees are included.
Okay, but there's no
In the purchase.
there's no operation costs. So in the lease option year 1 and 2, that's not really O&M, that's just maintenance. The operations cost is your staff labor, which is going to apply no matter which one.
Well, these numbers represent
Operations.
Right.
So when I said O&M, it's just maintenance.
maintenance.
Okay, so under the lease, those are the maintenance costs. The purchase option, these are our obviously estimated maintenance costs. And these maintenance costs appear to run about 40% less than under the lease option. I'm sure you've done your homework and those are reasonable estimates, but can you tell me why they're so much less than the lease option maintenance cost?
Well, it costs them money.
Okay. Okay, well, I don't have any other questions.
no, we get it on the consent agenda next week, and as far as I'm concerned, the purchase option is a resolution to bring to us.
Yeah, the only other thing would be if they're able to ascertain what the likely impact is going to be on their participating jurisdictions, that they might give them a heads up. It doesn't sound like it's going to be a significant increase. In fact, it may not be an increase at all, but just letting them know that there's a change coming, I think they would appreciate.
Well, I guess I could let you know now too that Diana has, our election supervisor has
Probably already done that.
well, she's actually let us know that she's, I hate to say moving to greener pastures, but she's selected chosen to move on and accept some new challenges in her career. So, we're going to be reaching out to our elections partners in a lot of ways to explain the new system as well as the change in our elections position. So, we'll do that.
Anything you want to add to that? I think under our new background check policy, you're not allowed to leave for like 7 years after that's put in place.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Does it count if it's my third one?
Yeah.
Well, sure, we'll count it as year 3, and there's only 4 years left on your contract.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm Diana Izagiri, and I'm the election administrator for Franklin County, working under Matt Beaton, the county auditor. And I have been with the county over 20 years, and
Yeah.
I have had many opportunities to be in front of this board, and I really appreciate all of the support and guidance that we've gotten from this board. I personally, after all these years, so thank you. And I'm going to miss everybody, and I'll be in touch. I'm going on to San Mateo County in California
Oh, really?
to be director of elections there.
Well,
300,000 voters versus 30. I'll be flexing my muscles. So thank you.
I think that's a win for San Mateo. I'll personally be sad to see you go. I think you've done a great job for us, so thank you.
Thanks, Diana.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate that.
Okay, thank you. With that, Keith, anything more for us?
I believe that's all we have to bring for the board today.
Okay. All right. Rick, you got anything for us today?
No, I don't have anything. I think the meeting went well, even over the phone here. It was a little staggering sometimes. I couldn't hear everything, but it did go pretty well over this phone. So I most likely will see you in the meeting room next week, though.
Yeah. Good. Things are progressing then.
Yes, yes.
Was that you I saw jogging over at the CBC track last night?
No, I don't think that was me. Did I have a wheelchair or a walker?
Well, he was hobbling a little bit.
No, that wasn't me. Haven't got that far yet.
Okay. Folks up in Spokane take good care of you?
Yeah, good doctor. He's good. There's some other problems there, but it wasn't caused by him. It was some other little things there that I didn't appreciate, but other than that, he was good. So, good guy.
I asked him to tell you right before you went in that Bob and I were going to be assisting, but I guess he didn't tell you that, or the drugs had already taken hold.
No, he didn't mention that at all.
Yeah, I think the drugs had already kicked in. All right.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else for the good of the board, we are adjourned this morning. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks for coming in, Steve.
Thank you, sir, very much.